coordinator. And let's go ahead and let's begin. Welcome. I think many of you know me, not everybody does. I'm Christine Shupla. I'm at the Lunar and Planetary Institute, where I am our Science Engagement Manager. And we have three excellent presenters here with us today, partners, all of them. So let's go ahead and let's let them introduce themselves. Mitzi, do you want to go first? Say a couple words about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mitzi Stoute Faniola. I'm the Executive Director for Boys and Girls Clubs in Texas, Texas Alliance, and we are the statewide organization that represents 69 autonomous Boys and Girls Club organizations across the state. We do state, federal, and private fundraising for clubs, and we help connect them to resources in their communities and across the state of Texas.
Thank you. Catherine, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Catherine. I am on the leadership group of the NISE network. It's the National Informal STEM Education Network, and we're a national network throughout the country of mostly science museums, children's museums, and scientists. And we work to increase the capacity of informal science educators nationwide. And I'm also on staff at Arizona State University. So, Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Vierow-Fields. I'm an education associate at the Space Science Institute. And what we tend to focus on is expanding STEM engagement in public libraries. So our biggest overhead program is the Star Library Network. And so we do trainings and some other stuff on helping public libraries bring STEM to their communities.
Thank you all. So with us, it looks like we've got a good group of people. We're glad you're all here. If any of you want to unmute and say a word or two about yourself, you are welcome to. We'll do that really quickly, and then let's get diving in. So would anyone like to unmute and say a couple words about themselves? You'll have time later on. We'll get to it. Okay. So our agenda today, right now. Oh yeah, so please, Verdis, please do go ahead and say a couple words about yourself.
Hi, my name is Viridis Miranda Verocales. I'm a geophysical analyst at the Puerto Rico Seismic Network. I locate earthquakes. I'm also a master's student at the geology department, and I attended the Lunar Planetary Workshop in November, where I got to meet these wonderful people from the Planetary Workshop, and I got to meet Christine and all the wonderful team, and I'm so glad in being here. And I love planetary science, so for as a long-term goal for a PhD, I want to focus on that path.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to jump in and say a word or two about themselves?
Well, hi, I'm Andrea from Puerto Rico. Great to hear Viridis again after last year. And I'm from the Space Grant Consortium in Puerto Rico. I work as an educational assistantship in a program called H2O, which is in partnership with the Europa Clipper mission. Great to meet everybody.
So good to see you again, Andrea. Would anyone else like to say hi?
Hi, I'm Laura May Abron. I'm from France. I work at Griffith Observatory as a, I guess, public astronomer or something like that, and currently trying to get back into research, and also am an artist making works connected to astronomy and science in general. And I attended the workshop at SETI last summer, which was brilliant and which I tell everyone about.
Thanks, Laura May. Belinda, you unmuted yourself. Would you like to say a word or two?
Sure. I'm Belinda Calvillo. Nice to see everybody. I work at the Pasadena Public Library and a library services coordinator, and I do all of our outreach programs here in the city of Pasadena.
Would anyone else like to say anything about themselves, introduce themselves? All right, that's 5 seconds. I hope that some of you will speak up later on during the workshop. Right now, what we're going to do, we're going to do an icebreaker. Then each of our presenters is going to say a few words for a little bit about their audiences, about their organizations, about the people they work with, and then we're going to go ahead and do whole group discussions and Q&A. So let's go ahead and let's move ahead to the icebreaker. For the icebreaker, we're using a Jamboard. Mitzi, thank you. You inspired me. The one that you suggested wasn't quite going to work exactly for me, but this is similar, I'm hoping. So we're going to share a Jamboard. I put the address for the Jamboard in the chat, and I'm going to, it's also there on the QR code if you prefer. And I'm going to share my screen in a minute. The first question, Stephanie suggested your favorite eclipse factoid. So there's a place there where you can add your favorite eclipse factoid. What you can draw, you can write, you can add a little chat, whatever you'd like there. And then below that question, are you partnering with anyone for an eclipse event? Since the whole US has gone eclipse crazy right now. I'm going to give a couple more seconds and I'm going to cover up that board with this so that we can all see it together. And
Christine, I think you need to make sure that we can add to it because right now it's view only for me.
oh, can anyone with the link can access? What does anyone with view? Sorry about that. Let's edit. Okay, updating. So anyone with the link should be able to edit it now, hopefully. Sorry about that. Thank you.
We can now. We're good.
Okay. So yeah, please feel free to add things to it. Let me finish moving it into view so that we can all see it. There we go. Make it nice and fit. Well, I was going to try to make it bigger, but and if you don't feel like adding something to that and you just want to be able to type something in the chat, you're welcome to do that as well. Belinda says that they're hosting a solar eclipse party. Absolutely. On the day of the eclipse here in Houston and Pasadena. And yeah, partners is great for eclipses since they always come in pairs. Laura May, I haven't paid attention. Is there a lunar eclipse?
There was.
Last week?
It was on Sunday night, but it was a penumbral. I actually regretted doing a little outreach about it because you really can't really tell when they're happening. I mean, penumbrals are really hard to spot, but it was happening.
Yep. And Andrea, so a virtual meeting for the eclipse, huh? H2O OH Puerto Rico. Awesome. So I'm gonna give everybody 10 more seconds to finish entering anything they want to in terms of a favorite eclipse factoid or in terms of who they might be partnering with or anything else about that. Belinda, they're partnering with their Parks and Recs department and a bunch of students and teachers. Yay. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, and that is 10 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and move that back out of the way. And let's go ahead and let's start talking a little bit more about partnerships. We're going to start off here with Catherine, who's going to tell us a little bit about NYSNet and about the way they foster these partnerships and relationships with museums. So,
thanks, Christine. Thanks so much for having me. Christine, we can jump to the next slide and you can flip through these really fast. I know there are several NYSNet partners on here today, so hopefully it's just a review for you. I won't take too long. So the NICE Network, we're a national network when we bring people together to engage in STEM and to understand our world and make a better future, hopefully for everyone. Next slide. We create and share products, practices, and materials with partner organizations across the country. And our resources are available for everyone for free online to download and use. And Christine, do you want me just to drop in links or skip it? I can skip.
Oh, that's a good point. We need to make sure that they get those links. You know what? I've got links at the very end. I think I've got your link and everybody else's at the very end. And I've also got a handout at the very end. So yeah.
So next slide. And so we have hundreds of organizations that participate nationwide, and the majority of them tend to be museums and colleges and universities. And typically the individuals that participate are educators of different kinds, scientists, but also evaluators and researchers. Next slide. And we partner organizations that use the resources to engage learners in their own communities. And really we focus on local use for this work. Next slide. And together as a network, we reach millions of people a year. And next slide. And we focus a lot on diversity, equity, access, inclusion, and belonging. And we do that through several different strategies. A lot of it is on local collaborations. We also try and use best practices when we're developing materials in the first place. And then also really supporting our net partners' efforts through professional learning on those topics. Next slide. And then we try and tackle some challenging problems. We also tend to focus on emerging science topics. So that's something that's continued throughout our different projects. And we really focus on developing new knowledge, tools, and practices together. Next slide. To give you a sense, these are, this map shows locations that have received physical kits or exhibits from us in every state and most US territories as well. And we also have more partners that are participating in different ways, but this is really focused on the physical materials that we've sent out and distributed over the years. Next slide, please. Again, this is another way of looking at things is sort of our development process. We have many different projects that tend to have a different constellation of experts and organizations in terms of the development side of things. And then we also have different organizations participating when we create and disseminate. And really that goal again is to increase the capacity of informal educators nationwide to engage public audiences in STEM learning. So next slide, please. In terms of our professional learning resources, the kinds of things we offer tend to focus on STEM content and public engagement. We also focus on implementation, delivery, and facilitation techniques and tools. And then again, relevance and inclusion, super important to us. Next slide, please. Some of the kinds of things we do a lot of hands-on activities. With those, we always have hands-on activity guides and training materials for staff and volunteers who will be actually facilitating those activities. We try and always have training videos for our activities as well. And we also have some training videos that are sort of more general about science communication and techniques. I'll talk a little bit about a couple tip sheets and written guides that I thought would be specifically good for this audience here. We have had some opportunities over the years to have kind of more communities of practice and professional learning communities. And then one thing we do offer all the time is online workshops, usually once a month on different topics. Next slide, please. One of the things I wanted to mention to you, given this topic today, is we have a collaboration guide that's more than 10 years old right now. And this one is really focused on museum community collaborations, but really goes through a lot of things about thinking about why do you want to collaborate? What do you want to get out of it? And gives you starting points and suggestions for starting a new relationship and maintaining an existing one. Next slide, please. One thing I think it's always helpful to think about in any kind of partnership is There's no right or wrong here. What's really the right is what's right for you, the two parties involved at that time. And collaborations and partnerships change over time. They can be really limited and get more intense and change as your changing circumstances happen. And so there's no right or wrong way here. It's really thinking about what do you have capacity to do and how do your goals match together and line up. So next slide. I think boiling down some of these tips is, why do you want to collaborate? It's really, you want to achieve something you can't do on your own. And the most basic tips are to be patient, and it takes time. And that's something I think all of us, me always am reminding myself, is like, I want to jump to the end or jump to the next step. And that's something that really just takes time. Things move at the speed of trust, and it's really worth taking the time to get to know each other. Each partner always has a lot to learn and a lot to offer each other, and really listening to each other about what you're interested in, what you can and can't do, what your limitations are. We really suggest always starting small. It's good to start small and build from there, and really try and focus on communication, so that we always know things don't always go right. Somebody misses a message, somebody gets sick, the emails don't get through. And so it's always good to be able to have a honest, direct communication with each other. So next slide, please. Okay. We also have a working with experts guide. This was written more for the museum audience of looking for experts. And it goes through stages of why do you want to bring the public and experts together directly, and different ways to work with experts, and how you can help prepare the experts to work with the public audience directly. And then a lot of effort is on strategies and finding experts. So next slide, please. So this guide has a whole appendix that focuses on different content areas to try and find experts. The big reason is, why do you want to have an expert engage the public directly? Obviously, the expert has content knowledge, and that's what makes them the expert, content about something in particular. But they can offer so much more beyond just facts and information. And next slide is the experts really can share their passion in a topic and really help get people thinking about things in different ways. I think, Christine, this one's not advancing for me. Oh, there it goes. So we go through in this guide kind of research behind some of these things of the why it's valuable to share, to have this direct connection between scientists and the public directly. And I think what's always striking to me is there's a lot of studies that look at when you ask people, do you know a scientist? And almost everybody says no, they don't. And they may say their doctor. That's as close as it gets usually. And so I think it's something that for people who are in the science world, you know, they think they know scientists all the time, but most people don't know a scientist and have never met one. And it's often very influential in people's lives. So next step, please. In terms of ways scientists can work with museums, there are a lot of different formats. I think some people really think about guest lectures first, but I think for most museums, hands-on activities are one of the most common ways they bring scientists into their doors and meet with their visitors. Another is special events at the museum and outside, and special events take a lot of effort and a lot of people power to make happen. Guest lectures, obviously, forums are kind of more intensive, longer dialogues. Is another format some museums use. Science cafes, often happening not at a museum, but as another different kind of format. Mentoring, especially with youth groups, is another, and kind of these big festivals is another opportunity. Some people pursue really big joint collaborative projects between museums and scientists. But that's not something you can usually start at the very beginning of your relationship. Especially some larger museums, do a lot of professional development for their own staff and volunteers, and really appreciate having guest lectures and scientists to talk to. Another is a liaison role that might not be direct connection with the public, but it's really, if you're at a community college, say, it's really nice for that museum to have a relationship there to even understand who they could contact at the community college and how could you contact a student group, and being that liaison, that go-between between your organization and the museum is incredibly helpful. Another is advisory roles. A lot of museums are interested in different aspects of having scientists in different ways participate and give them advice. And I think that's something that's another possibility too. Next slide, please. If you're looking for, I know some people here are on the call are informal science education institutions, but if you're a scientist and you don't know a museum near you, the Association of Science Technology Centers has a list of science museums. Association of Children's Museums has a great list. And for NISE Network, we also have a list on our website of all the museums and other locations who have ever received a kit from us, so you know what they might have at their facility. And we're also happy to make a connection. If you're looking for a connection, you don't know somebody, you can't find the person. Finding the right person at a museum can be hard, especially large museums. It's really, they don't always have their staff lists online, and it's hard to find people. But you're typically looking for a volunteer coordinator, events coordinator, an education manager. And rather than trying to just show up at the museum and say, hi, can I talk to me now? It's really contact them ahead of time, make an appointment, introduce yourself. And again, if you need help connecting with a museum and you're looking for a person, we can try and help with that if it's one of our partners. Next slide, please. Something we have these tip sheets on a variety of topics, but one super helpful, I think, for scientists is we have a guest speakers tip sheet, tried to boil it down to a page, and also one for leading hands-on activities. There's things you already have known and have heard during your professional life, but it helps a little bit to remind you of what to expect, because sometimes what to expect at a science museum full of 5- and 6-year-olds is really different than a guest lecture for adults. And so it's just helpful to be prepared. We also are a big fan of orientation and training events for ahead of special and right before, often for special events. That can be incredibly helpful. And I think we lost it, Christine, there.
Sorry.
Okay.
There we go.
So, this is like one of our rapid, this is a synthetic biology event photo, probably had about 40 volunteers, college students, and was trying to get them up to speed really quickly about what to expect at the event and to practice and how to do the activities. So next slide, Christine. So if you want to volunteer at a museum and you're, I think the first thing again is asking staff at the museum, what do they need? What do they need? What does their museum need? What are they interested in? One of the easiest things to do is volunteer in an event the museum may already be planning. Museums tend to do lots of big events like annual things like Halloween events and Earth Day events and National Chemistry Week, and those are an easy way to fit in. We suggest starting with an existing hands-on activity rather than trying to start and develop one of your own. If you go to the next slide, Christine, we're almost done. We have a large database of activities on different topics at nisenet.org/browse topic. That's an easy way to find things on a particular topic. I know a lot of you may be Earth and space focused, and we have quite a few Earth and space science activities. Another great database is How to Smile, full of STEM activities, and it's a really great one for also finding more. And starting with something that exists, it's just much easier to get you started and then you can really focus on the experience. Next slide, please. And then I just have a bunch of links of Earth and space activities for in particular if you're looking for something that on these particular topics. So, and I think, Christine, that is the end for me.
Thank you so much. We're going to do questions for all of our panelists together at the end. Mitzi, do you want to say a few words before we go on to Stephanie about?
Sure.
Please.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the executive director for the statewide alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs in Texas. And, we're dedicated to ensuring that Texas' most under-resourced youth have greater access to quality programming and services that'll help enhance their lives and shape their futures. And, excuse me. Part of that is ensuring that our autonomous club organizations across the state have quality partners in their communities and statewide. And our clubs offer daily access to a broad range of programs in 5 core program areas: character and leadership development, education and career development, health and life skills, the arts, and then sports, fitness, and recreation. Many of our club organizations have industry partners, educational partners across the state in their regions. If you're ever interested in volunteering with a Boys and Girls Club, whether it be in Texas or in any of the other states across the country, you can, quite honestly, the easiest way to do it is Google Boys and Girls Clubs. And if you pull up Boys and Girls Clubs of America, you'll have a tool on that website to determine a club location closest to you in the state you reside in. Club organizations are always looking for volunteers, especially industry volunteers who want to bring what it is they do in their professional life into a club and expose those under-resourced children to that industry. That's one of our greatest efforts at the Statewide Alliance, is ensuring that club youth and teens have access to STEM education, whether it be through a partnership with Lunar Planetary Institute or one of the many space contractors, workforce development agencies like the Texas Workforce Commission. And as Catherine mentions in here as well, is being inclusive. While Boys and Girls Clubs doors are open to all, we obviously have a huge focus on under-resourced and ensuring that communities, Black and Brown communities, have access to the same resources that everyone has access to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitzi. Stephanie, you're next. I'm going to share your slides here. There we go.
Awesome. So hi, everybody. As I said before, my name is Stephanie, and I work at the Star Library Network, which is a kind of umbrella project at the Space Science Institute. So I'm going to talk to you guys kind of about partnering with a public library. So kind of some of those strategies for really supporting the work that they're doing. Little different from NYSDET. In like NYSDET, you can use their stuff to go immediately to like a museum, and they're great at that support. With us, it's more about like, how do you work with the library? Because what we do is actually support the libraries themselves and helping them do the STEM education. Just because a lot of libraries and library staff don't have STEM backgrounds, and STEM is a very intimidating topic. So we want to try to help them with the best support that we can. So next slide. So yeah, so we're known as kind of colloquial as StarNet, which again stands for Science, Technology, Activities, and Resources for Libraries. So this is a project that's been going on for at least the last 10 to 15 years. We originally started our education in science centers and museums and trying to support the work that they were doing. And then as we kind of developed more our education backgrounds and understanding, we realized that there are 17,000 public libraries in the United States. My favorite factoid is the fact that there are more public libraries than McDonald's right now. And I love that. And so we really wanted to make sure that we could impact as many communities as possible. And there's going to be a library in a rural community before there's anything else. So next slide. So how we support libraries right now is this laundry list. So we do museum level exhibits that tour in public libraries. We have a few touring right now. We've got our Moon, Mars, and Beyond exhibit that's in Crowley, Texas. We got the Discover Exoplanets exhibit that's in Connecticut right now. We've got the STEAM Equity exhibit, which focuses on rural Latinx communities, that's touring all around the US. So we've got some really cool stuff touring. We do kits. Professional development. I spent last year being on a plane every 4 days training public library staff on the upcoming eclipses. And we were able to impact all 50 states plus the US territories with this. So that's like our biggest project so far. Community dialogues, as you guys do partnership building, this is a tool that we've developed to actually, for library staff to have those community conversations, for libraries to be able to reach out for partnerships and things like that. Again, partnership guidance. We do SME matchmaking, so like subject matter experts. So those of you who are scientists, we like to try to connect you guys to public libraries. So that way you guys can work together to develop programs and be able to bring your science to those communities. We do special events, we do interactive activities, and you guys can read all of that. You can find a lot of information about us at our website, which I just put in the chat. And one of our big things that we do is our STEM Activity Clearinghouse, which I will also throw in the chat. This is a repository of, we are now over 600 vetted STEM activities. Some of those we've got from NISNet, some of those we've got from the Lunar and Planetary Institute. We kind of tried to create one space where you could find a lot of these activities. And we've actually looked at these to make sure that they can be in a public library setting, just because the difference between a library and a school, like libraries don't always have all of the same resources that schools can have. So that's kind of what our clearinghouse is about. Now, next slide. And this is something that's super important, is why do we work with libraries? And I already know one of you guys is a public library staff member, so this is all, you know this already. But they serve diverse communities and they have high repeat visitation rates. Specifically they're valued by African-American and Hispanic communities, which is incredibly important. And libraries are typically a 1-to-1 ratio of what their community looks like. I love museums and science centers, but sometimes they're a barrier because you have to pay to get in, and that already self-selects who can come in, whereas public libraries are free institutions. So you'll typically find the same community inside a library as out. It enhances STEM capacity because they are an accessible focal point. They also provide STEM collections for independent learning. Library staff love to organize like workshops and programs. And even if a library staff member does not have a background in STEM, library staff are very educated and they're willing to try new things and they're willing to learn. And so they love to learn with their patrons. So they're really a great place where you're going to find someone who says, yes, I'd love to do this. And then a lot of libraries, especially now, are creating dedicated STEM areas. No longer are libraries the quiet place to you just go check out a book and read. They can be messy, they can be loud. They've got maker spaces and STEM labs and all of these things that they're creating. And so libraries are really a great place to partner with. So I wanted to make sure that we highlighted, why are we talking public libraries? Because they are not quiet repositories anymore. They are about learning and exploring and creativity. Next slide. So what kind of programs are you going to find in a library? Well, libraries do lecture series. Kind of the things that we like to focus on and highlight is they do programs like STEM Storytime. They will do STEM outreach events like the eclipse. We have in our solar eclipse activities for libraries project, say that, seal, little seal, it's a little easier to say. We've partnered with 13,000 of the 17,000 public libraries in the United States. And they're all doing events or things around the eclipse. So there's STEM outreach events, there are maker spaces in the labs, and library staff love to have people come in and use those and talk about them. Community science initiatives, a lot of libraries are doing like citizen science type activities. So another partner we've worked with is the Globe Observer. They have a great citizen science initiative. And a lot of libraries love to do the citizen science because it's putting it in their hands, it's putting it in their patrons' hands, and they're out to go do and have fun. And then probably the biggest one is hands-on activities. Libraries love doing hands-on activities. And it's something that's engaging for kids and adults. And it gets everybody kind of doing it together, including the library staff. Next slide. So how do you support public library programming? Making sure it's like super engaging content. Like I said, lecture series are definitely part of library programs, but sometimes that's geared towards a very specific group. So having like really engaging content, things that people can be messy with and learn about is really a great way to support a library. One of the biggest things is try to program in the box. If you are wanting to partner with a public library, bring all of the resources, bring everything with you, hand them something where all they have to do is help to facilitate it. But they don't have to do a lot of like planning with it is one of the best ways to support a public library. They are doing a lot. They are helping patrons with things like food assistance applications. They are helping teach how do I use a computer for their older patrons. They are doing a lot. So if you can bring as much of the resources and as much of the planning ahead of time, that really will help public libraries. A lot of the programs are more about exploration and hands-on learning. Not saying that lecture series, that is sometimes one of the best things for learning, but really when you're thinking about programs, how can you make it very exploratory? How can you make it hands-on? And one of the things I emphasize is be aware of staff support. Not every library staff member has a background in STEM. And it's a very intimidating concept. So if you can bring in a lot of that expertise and being like, you don't have to understand why the eclipse is happening. Why do we have perfect eclipses? If you can make sure that they don't have to understand that and you bring that, that can help support them. And then also understand the audience at your library programs. The reason why I'm like lecture series may not always be the best is library programs can be family oriented, multi-generational. And while adults can be very engaged in lecture series, elementary school kids maybe not as much. So be aware kind of what the audience will be at the library and understand that even if you're doing something for tweens sometimes have little brothers and sisters that will be coming along too. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind that it's going to be multi-generational, it's going to be family oriented, have a little bit of something for everybody. Next slide. Yeah, so that's what I have to talk about. Pretty fast, pretty easy. If you have questions, you are always welcome to email me. I'm happy to chat through like, yeah, that's a great idea for a library, or maybe try this. So you have my email and phone number there. And of course, through Christine, you can get hold of me. And that's what I have.
So what I'd like to do now, I'd like to start with a question that somebody, we have several questions that people submitted when they were finishing and filling out the form to join the webinar. And this one, I'd like to allow everybody, including all of our participants, to think about the answer as well as our speakers. So it's an interesting question. Where do you see the greatest room for improvement in how STEM subject matter experts engage with informal educators? And the way I'd like to do this is I'd like for us to do what's called a chat storm. I'm going to ask everybody to think for about 15, 20 seconds, then type in their answers for about another 10 seconds, and then we'll all hit enter at the same time. So you can think, you can start to type, don't hit return yet. I don't want to see the answers yet. We're going to give everybody another 15 seconds to think. And you can start typing, but don't hit return yet. If you've got an answer for this, where do you see the greatest room for improvements and how STEM subject matter experts engage with informal educators? I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to type in an answer. What do you think? Okay. In 10 seconds, we're going to hit return. So everybody's answers are going to appear in the chat. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. Where do you see the greatest room? Awesome. We've got a lot. We've got a mixture of answers here. Wonderful. So the room with engaging with all communities and cultures, acknowledging underrepresented communities in the industry. There's room for that, of course. We don't know. Great answer. Yeah, it's hard to say. Preparing experts with expectations. So sometimes scientists or other experts may not be prepared for expectations about what people are interested in or relevant to them, keeping in mind the multiple ways of learning. So just this tendency that many experts have that they're being asked to give a talk instead. taking knowledge out of their own spaces. Interesting, Laura May. Thank you. STEM experts can do more to reach outside of their local communities, sometimes going a little bit further out, particularly meeting informal educators where they're at in more underserved communities. Thank you so much. STEM experts can develop a way to make it more relatable. Do any of our panelists have anything they want to add to this question?
It's a hard question.
It's a very hard question. Do any of our participants have anything that they want to add? You're welcome to unmute and add something if you thought of something else that you'd like to say or add to it.
I think often there isn't a final goal in mind when, you know, when there's STEM people interacting with informal educators. You know, I'm on both sides of it, and I don't see a lot of just, okay, let me get in touch with a museum or whatever and come give these people a talk so that they can disseminate the information. There's very little collaboration with an end goal of, I want the public to know about the research I'm doing on X, Y, or Z. Let me get in touch with the people who actually are specialized in doing this.
Thank you. I am going to move to another question that was added. How do I create, and I'm going to invite all of our, we have several scientists who are here on this as participants. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts. How does someone create a link or a familiarity with planetary scientists to come do outreach, to do lectures, whether it's to, in this case, the person's at a university and is looking for things, working with students at the university, but just in general, how would you recommend, if somebody is looking for you or for other scientists like you, where should they go? Should they, what ideas do you have? It's a hard one too. There isn't a single repository for planetary scientists. No answers yet, huh? Some suggestions I have, well, for starters, you can reach out to us at Planetary ReaCH and we can see what we can do to help. Local universities, see if they have a geology department or an astronomy department that might have a planetary scientist in it. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be somebody who enjoys doing outreach, or might be somebody who's an excellent speaker or might not be. So you might want to Google them and see if, when I was looking for speakers for a series, I would look up what their, more about them, what their CV said. Are they talking in their CV about all the talks that they give? Are they talking in their CV about how they like to do outreach? Is it mentioned at all in any way? And then you can also Google in terms of the service they provide. If they've served as president of DPS, then they might be a very good speaker, because you kind of have to be somebody who likes to give talks to raise to certain positions. Social media, that's another great point, Laura May. Yeah, social media. There are many planetary scientists who are on social media as well, Twitter and social, and Facebook and other places. So absolutely. And then there's certain organizations and agencies as well. AGU and AAS both have lists of people. Sometimes I'll get a directory and I'll look up who is in certain fields and where they are if I'm looking for somebody. But that doesn't tell me, again, if they're necessarily going to be interested in outreach or public engagement. But yeah, you can also reach out to us at Planetary ReaCH and we'll see what we can do to help. So let's see. There were some other questions that were asked by people who aren't here. So I'm not going to, but Yasmin has one, Catherine, about NISENet in Puerto Rico. Are there NISENet museums in Puerto Rico.
Yep, and Yasmin is at one at Arecibo. And we've had, with some of our older projects that we're focusing on nanoscience and material science, we did a lot with University of Puerto Rico scientists and Humacao and at Rio Piedras and at Mayaguez. And we actually had a lot of work with it's Casa Roja, the history museum there, which is an architectural house. And so we did a lot with them. And then in more recent years with Earth and Space projects, Arecibo has been one of our main contacts in Puerto Rico. So.
All right, I'm going to open up the floor now to everyone. And yeah, Stephanie, you've been working with libraries in Puerto Rico. You did a workshop, an eclipse workshop in Puerto Rico, and have been working there as well. Does anyone have a question right now that has occurred to you that you either want to unmute to ask or that you want to enter in the chat?
Hi, this is Jasmine. Catherine, I'm glad to see you here. Last time, when I participated with Christine and the rest of the group, I talked about the NiceNet network, and I think it is great to have you here. And yes, they have a lot of materials that are really great for informal or formal educators. And related to the libraries, Stephanie, I was curious where in Puerto Rico you made the contact with which library was participating in your program.
Yeah, so the library connection that we made was, I believe it was at the military base. Give me 1 second and I'll pull up who it was. Because that is a brand new talking partnership. That's a new partnership for us. The Eclipse program allowed us to work with the territories, which we've never done before. So we were able to develop relationships in Guam, Saipan, American Samoa, and then Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands.
That's great.
Let me see who that was real fast. I gotta dig through my email.
How many libraries attended the workshop there? It was a number, right?
Yeah, Annie and Claire were the ones that went to that. I think we had about, because they did multiple days in Puerto Rico, I think they had like 60 library staff from across the island. Also worked a little bit with some of the schools in Puerto Rico, and we're actually looking at sending one of our exhibits down to Puerto Rico this year, at the end of this year. It's either going to be our STEAM Equity exhibit or our Moon, Mars, and Beyond exhibit should be going down.
That sounds great. Thank you.
And yeah, Mitzi, thank you for entering some bit about the Boys and Girls Clubs in Puerto Rico as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. For those of you that are interested in volunteer time, Boys and Girls Clubs of Puerto Rico is an incredible organization. I encourage you to reach out. They've done a lot of work, especially and with recent natural disasters. The clubs have really come through to serve the communities across the island.
So I found where my person's at. I'm going to throw that into the chat because I can't pronounce it without butchering it. I know they're in Dorado is where their library is located, is who we were working with.
I have another question that I'd like to open up to all of our participants as well as our speakers. And that is, how do you recommend, how would you, so all of our participants and all of our speakers, how would you find and select a partner? What are some of the considerations you would put into finding and selecting a partner? I'm going to let everybody think for a little bit.
I was gonna say I'll go first, as people think, because this is kind of one of my big focus, is looking at missions. Do the missions align? That is probably the number one thing when you're looking for a partner. Is, are they trying to do the same thing I'm doing? Are they trying to reach the same group of people potentially, or do they have the same topics? But making sure that their mission and your mission align really helps strengthen and create good partnerships.
One thing that we really focus on at Boys and Girls Clubs is ensuring the continuation of workforce in a state. And so if your industry is interested in expanding and elevating the current workforce, because we know that in the next 5 to 10 years, the current workforce will be almost obliterated. And so for clubs, the youth we serve are the future of the workforce in each of your states and communities. And so workforce development is obviously a big part of our platform and how we ensure that our youth have successful futures. And by partnering with industry who are engaged in, it's obviously a priority of theirs to ensure workforce is stable for the economy.
Thank you, Mitzi. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add or put in the chat additionally?
I think one other thing to keep in mind with partnerships, you go into it thinking, how can they support me? But also look at it, how can I support them? What are things that they're lacking that I can provide? So like one of the things when we talk and give, professional development training with our libraries and we're helping them develop partnerships, we're like, how can you support your partner? What are things the library can do? Is it just getting the word out there? Is it providing a meeting space for them? Like, what are ways you can also support your partner? So when you're developing partnerships, also think of that, of how can I support what they're doing?
Awesome. I have some points here on a slide, and the QR code that's there is the same one that I shared at the beginning here. I'm going to reshare it again. It's where all these slides are, and there's also a handout that has some of this information. Some of the points on here are points that Mitzi and Catherine and Stephanie shared and made now, or Mitzi has participated in an earlier workshop, one that Belinda participated in as well, on a similar topic about partnerships. So my next question is, does anyone here, and again, this is participants as well as our speakers, have suggestions? How would you initiate a partner? So you've picked out, you want to work with this Boys and Girls Club or this library or this museum. How do you get started? How do you get started? What do you do first? Does anyone have a suggestion?
I guess, Christine, I would say is we encourage people to cast a wide net. I think it's obviously if you're thinking about your museum looking for a scientist, usually we suggest people, do an introductory email just to start it off. So it's not a phone call or you're trying to catch someone on the spot, but give them a little background about yourselves and what you're interested in. And lots of people won't reply, and that's okay. I think that's right. Maybe they don't have time and capacity to work with you right now, and that's fine. You're not trying to pressure them into it. And so, but we really encourage people, especially student groups, are often really interested. Service groups, going to different staff in different departments at a college, say, or business, and then also scientists as well. And so we try, and also some professional societies, Christine, as you were mentioning ADU, but professional societies that have local chapters are organized that way. Or I think, like, I would say American Chemical Society is amazing. They have, extremely orderly process for helping you find somebody who already has registered as being interested in doing public engagement. And so I think that's really helpful. So, and student chapters too. So those are good.
Thank you.
I will say from a public library standpoint, and I see I've got at least two public library staff members, Lisa and Belinda, in here. So you guys, if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. I usually say, one, it depends on the size of the library, because rural libraries can be literally 1 FTE or even 0.5 FTE for a library. So some of it depends on which library you're working with. If you have a larger library that's multiple staff, working with someone like reaching out to the outreach librarians, some libraries have that. Youth services library staff do a lot of programming. Sometimes there's specifically programming library staff members who that's their job. Or adult services programming. I mean, sometimes the best bet with a public library is just call them up and say, hey, I would love to do a program. Who do I talk to? And the reference desk should be able to help you with that. For Belinda or Lisa or anybody else who's a public library staff member, if you have other ideas, throw those into the chat. But that's where I would start, is either just calling them up saying, I'd love to do a program for you. Who should I talk to? Or if there's an outreach librarian, programming librarian, something along those lines, they're a great person to start with.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other additional suggestions on this idea? I'm going to go ahead and share some of the ideas that this group has put together already for you on initiating a partnership. Particularly the one that sometimes we skip, and I think it's really important, is that one about actively learning about your partner's cultural norms. And don't put it on them. Okay, I need you to tell me everything. No, that's not fair. I need to do some research and find out more about how the culture that you're working with, what those norms are, about the people, about whether it's the organization cultural norms or the people they serve, or yeah, and that's on me to do, not on me to expect somebody else to do for me. And
yeah, I will say, Christine, to jump on that, a great example is with the eclipse, when we were doing workshops in Arizona and Utah, working with the Navajo reservation, who views eclipse in a very different way than we do, where they do not typically go outside. We hosted a workshop where we had some Navajo elders who came who couldn't even look at the pictures of eclipses on the workshop. And it was up to us to learn about that. And we were like, all right, here's ideas that we have to support you in doing this work without you having to deal with, things that are in their culture and their religion. So that is something to always keep in mind, is sometimes you just don't know.
And I recognize that we're just about out of time. There's some points here about sustaining partnerships and some of these links that I put together about where to look for partners. And a reminder that all of these slides and this handout are online. When you leave, folks, a survey should pop up, and you should also, I think, get an email later with a survey link that'll give us the opportunity to hear back from you. We'd like to do more webinars like this for those who have participated in a Planetary ReaCH workshop, and I want to hear from you what topics you'd like, when you'd like to have them, things like that. So I'd love your feedback. It would be very, very helpful. So we're pretty much out of time. Any last questions from any of our participants? Any last statements from any of our panelists?
No, it's just great to be able to present. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out.
The same. Happy to answer questions and follow up later. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, please join me in thanking our speakers and for giving up their time and planning and working with us on this about partnerships. So we really, really appreciate it. And thank you all so much. I'm going to stop the recording at some point here, if I can find where that went.